The chilling truth is that cameras never lie, and this time they have captured the last moments of 3 South African police service officers, showing details that change everything. Tonight, we break down the hidden story that street cameras uncovered from what investigators missed at first glance, to the shocking sequence that led to the deaths of these officers, and what this means for justice in South Africa. The footage doesn't just show faces, it exposes motives. If you had access to the raw street footage, would you want to see it for yourself? Or would knowing the truth be enough? Comment below. I'm curious where you stand. The footage starts off with nothing out of the ordinary. A regular South African street where vendors were setting up stalls. Cars passed slowly, and people went about their daily business. In the background, ACP's vehicle rolls into view. Its presence is barely noted by those around it. For a moment, the scene could have been like any other day, a sobering reminder that tragedy often arrives quietly. Just seconds after the officers step out of their vehicle, the whole tone of the footage changes. Figures that had been stationary suddenly started moving with intent, their movements precise, almost rehearsed. What seemed random at first glance was in fact the execution of a plan, carried out in the narrow window between the officers leaving the car and the street realizing something was wrong. The attackers had positioned themselves carefully, blending in with pedestrians and vendors until the exact moment they were needed. One leaned casually against a wall. Another appeared to be examining goods from a store, while a third shifted through the crowd with no sign of urgency. Only the camera shows how calculated it all was, invisible to the human eye in real time, but undeniable when slowed and studied. When the first shots rang out, panic tore through the street. People scattered in every direction as the camera captured the split-second reactions of the officers, each one forced into a vulnerable position with almost no chance to mount a defense. The footage captures the chaos with chilling clarity, freezing forever those final moments as law and order collapsed into violence. The gunfire sound was later described by vendors and passers-by alike, but few could recall just who fired and from where. In the adrenaline of survival, details blurred. The footage provides what memory cannot: the direction of the shooters, their faces masked but not unseen, the exact moment when fear overcame clarity. Human testimony faltered, but the lens did not. As investigators reviewed the footage frame by frame, they made out weapons drawn. First came pistols, quick and easy to hide, followed by heavier rifles brought forward as the attack escalated. This detail mattered not only in reconstruction, but also in understanding the intent. The choice of weapons showed this was not opportunistic, but something planned, supplied, and executed with forethought. One disconcerting fact became apparent when patrol schedules were overlaid with the scene. The officers were not supposed to be on that particular street at that time, yet the attackers were in place. The coincidence set off immediate questions. How did they know? Was there advanced knowledge of the patrol route? Or had the attackers been tracking the officers for longer than anyone realized? The clearest shots came from one camera mounted above a storefront, but even that angle left part of the scene hidden. A blind spot stretched along the left-hand side of the street, where some attackers disappeared for critical moments before re-emerging. That single missing perspective frustrated investigators who had to assemble what happened from incomplete visuals. The difference between full clarity and lasting doubt rested on one unmonitored corner. Before the first shot was fired, the attacker's body language told the story. They were come almost unnervingly, so standing in the crowd with a composure that betrayed no nervousness. Some tugged at their clothing, others shifted their feet, but nothing in the way they moved betrayed hesitation. Only when investigators replayed the footage after the fact Could they see how those gestures signaled readiness, not casual behavior? As quickly as the bloodshed began, the attackers disappeared into the ham-ram rhythm of the city. In footage, they are seen to move purposefully towards nearby cars and melt into the traffic. Anyone on the street would have thought them ordinary passengers fleeing the violence. The getaway was as choreographed as the assault. The density of the street, serving both as cover and shield. The initial police review of the footage missed a significant gap in the timeline. A 3-minute segment, initially assessed as irrelevant, later revealed unexplained movements around the area. In those missing minutes, attackers regrouped and exchanged objects. Details only discovered when the footage was studied again by different eyes. That oversight delayed the investigation and gave the suspects precious time to scatter. When shell line casings recovered from the street were cross-checked with the video footage, a clearer sequence began to emerge. Each weapon discharge, seen on camera, correlated to a specific casing found at the scene. The cross-check confirmed both the number of shooters and the types of weapons used. Forensic science and digital evidence combined to create a timeline that would be sustainable in court. The footage did more than just guide investigators. It ignited public outrage. Local leaders demanded answers on how trained officers could be ambushed so effectively in broad daylight. Statements at press conferences were filled with anger and grief, each insisting that justice must be served swiftly. The political voices turned the footage into a rallying point, framing it as evidence not just of a crime, but of some deeper failure within the system. Behind the headlines, the families of the slain officers watched the footage with unbearable pain. For some, it was the first time seeing their loved ones' final moments. Children who had waved goodbye that morning were left staring at screens that recorded the abrupt end of those lives. The video was not just evidence, but a permanent reminder of absence, a piece of history that cut deeply into private grief. The footage spread through official channels. People questioned its security. Some even worried it might be tampered with in a country where corruption so often distorts the investigations of crime. If evidence as crucial could be altered, then the whole case might collapse. Louder debates started over how such sensitive digital records should be kept, by whom, and whether justice can survive the interference of human ambition. It is not an isolated incident. Analysts studying the footage put it into a line of other recent attacks against police officers, noticing various points of disturbing similarities. Ambushes carried out with precision, knowledge of patrols, and coordinated escapes were indicative of a larger pattern. The footage of these 3 officers added to the growing archives that suggested a co-systematic, not random acts of violence, but a strategy against law enforcement itself. Once the footage had been entered into evidence, the courts began their scrutiny. A new defense attorneys questioned the chain of custody, while prosecutors emphasized its clarity and consistency. Each and every frame was scrutinized for authenticity. Every timestamp checked for accuracy. Arguments in courtrooms, not only over the crime itself, but also the inclusion of modern technology into a justice system still substantially influenced by more aged procedural norms, echoed through the courtrooms. The verdict depended as much upon the process as it did on the truth. Beyond the case, the footage carried a weight far greater than the capture of the suspects. It forced the public to confront a sobering reality. Even those tasked with upholding the law are not immune from organized violence. The cameras told a story of fragility, of a society where danger can hide in daylight, and justice relies on a fragile thread of evidence. The killings of 3 officers became more than a crime. They became a mirror of the nation's struggle with safety, trust, and accountability. The street cameras did not record just an ambush. They revealed the precision of the attackers, the pain of the families, and the flaws in a system still fighting to balance truth with justice. What started off as another tragic headline turned into a lesson of how technology exposes violence as much as vulnerability. As public attention grew further, civil organizations and law enforcement experts called for reforms by making a call to invest in better surveillance systems, improve training for officers, and strict protection of digital evidence to prevent manipulation or data loss. It became a case study in how coordinated violence could erupt in a very short amount of time, and how real-time monitoring is important in preventing such tragedies. The images, when finally made public many months later, left those who watched speechless. Citizens from all walks of life watched the final minutes of the officers' lives unfold on their screens, some out of anger, others out of sorrow. It stirred debate about the ethics of showing such recordings, with some believing the public had a right to transparency, while others felt it only deepened the family's grief. The footage became a symbol, one that reminded the nation of the risks faced daily by law enforcement officers, and the shadows that still lingered in the country's pursuit of justice. Across South Africa, memorials were held, candles lit, and tributes shared on social media using the hashtag Justice for the Three. Weeks later, arrests were made in connection to the killings. The suspects, identified through forensic and digital matches, were linked to a larger criminal network responsible for multiple ambushes. The discovery confirmed what many had feared, that this was part of an organized effort targeting law enforcement. The trial that followed drew nationwide attention, with the footage played in court as the central piece of evidence. Each frame became a weapon in the pursuit of justice. The case tested the boundaries between technology and truth, between grief and closure. When the verdict was finally read, it brought mixed feelings of relief and fatigue. For some, it was the sought-after justice. For others, it was only the beginning of a far deeper problem. The footage remained on file, preserved both as evidence and a grim recording of sacrifice. At the end of the day, it served as proof that one camera could capture more than a crime. It could capture the soul of a society still fighting for safety and integrity. The lens does not flinch. It does not forgive, and it does not forget. It exposes what the eye misses and what the heart struggles to take in. What began as ordinary surveillance footage became a turning point in a nation's reckoning with violence, corruption, and truth. As many more of these cases begin to surface, one question continues to haunt every individual who views such frames. Will the truth these cameras show finally lead to justice? Or will it just fade into another story that the world will decide to move on from? Keep with me, because in the next one, we revisit a moment wherein the lens caught more than any person expected.